cell phone silent, please.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire Asian American group, I would like to thank you for joining us this morning for our interviews. The Asian American group, my name is John Paris, I'm the chair of our endorsement committee. On behalf of all the board members we have present, again, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your busy campaign schedule to join us today. Under normal circumstances, I would introduce the Asian American group to you, but I know many of you have interviewed with us before, and quite candidly, we are more interested in hearing about your views as opposed to telling the world about who we are. Starting furthest from my right is Catherine Cortez Masto. She is the Democratic candidate for the United States Senate race. In the middle, we have Tony Gumina, who is a nonpartisan entrant in that same Senate race. And furthest to my left is Mary Perry, who is the Republican candidate in Congressional District 1. The first question that we're asking of everyone is this, and we'll start with Catherine and then go down the line. Catherine, why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come out and speak with all of you. I've enjoyed my relationship with the community here in Nevada, and so it's always good to come in and talk with all of you. Thank you. But for me, it's very simple. I think many people are just so frustrated with what's happening in Washington right now, the fact that we can't move anything forward, the bipartisan bickering. I am a bipartisan problem solver. That's how I spent my career. And I know people here in Nevada are looking to elect somebody that knows what it's like to work hard and also work across the aisle to get things done, to work in a bipartisan manner to move our country forward and particularly fight for the issues here in Nevada. That's what I've done as Attorney General for the 8 years that I was fortunate enough to be the Attorney General, from working on sex trafficking prevention to taking on the big banks to protect homeowners in this state. And then I was fortunate enough to be as the Attorney General. I could introduce legislation, which is very unique. So I introduced over 40 bills to the benefit of people in this state. They all passed out of our legislature with the support of Republicans and Democrats, and always signed by a Republican governor, because that's what this is about. It is about solving problems that are impacting people in our community and fighting for those issues, and that's why I'm running for the United States Senate.
Thank you, Catherine. Tony.
Sure, I'm Dr. Tony Gumina, and the reason I'm running is twofold. Number one is I've got 2 young children, 5 and 6-year-old, and I'm definitely worried and concerned about their future in our country. The problems with the bipartisan cabinet not making decisions appropriately, even though I thought the Republican change would have made a difference here in this last election, it didn't. And so that tells me that the politics as usual is not what's going to make a difference here. And I think we need independent thinkers who are willing to work together. The second reason, other than pretty much what Catherine mentioned, was that I've got a lot of experience dealing with people as a physician. I've dealt with many seniors, middle-aged people who've lost their jobs, things that have changed in the economic culture in the last 8 years. And I think I've got a lot of just knowledge as to regard what they've dealt with and how to work on fixing those items.
Thank you, Tony. And Mary.
A couple of years ago, I was driving around the neighborhood here in Congressional District 1, and all I could see was nothing but a bunch of empty strip malls, places where businesses used to be. And I started thinking, why are we being told our economy is better when almost twice the number of people is on welfare, when the people are in worse shape today than what they were 8 years ago? There's nothing but part-time minimum wage jobs that's being formed and developed, and that is not good. We need people in there that is going to work on both sides of the aisle to figure out what needs to happen, and handouts is not the way to go. We are also faced on a weekly, daily basis of terrorist attacks somewhere around the world, but it's starting to happen more and more here in this country. And we have to do something about it. We have to put people in there who is more interested in making sure that Americans are safe than protecting their party. We also need to go in there and make sure that cybersecurity is safe. That is a huge asset in our cyber world that is not being protected. We've got foreign governments able to come in and steal our secrets due to lack of proper security, whether it's on a personal level or even on a national level. That needs to be changed, and we're just not paying attention to the proper areas. So I want to go in there and change that. I am a disabled veteran. We're not taking care of our veterans. I don't care what the government is saying. The veterans are not being taken care of. I am in that group of people. It's not happening. We have great medical doctors at our VA. It's not the medical portion of it that's being left out. It's everything else. It's getting the people into the system so that they can get the proper care. We need to start paying attention to what the problem is instead of trying to sugarcoat the way that the world is.
And Mary, I'll start the next question with you and then go back down the line. This has been a rather unique political cycle. Both Trump and Sanders seem to key in on many voters who felt they were unrepresented or underrepresented. What ideas do you have to try and capture those individuals who really weren't part of the political process up until recently, and try and keep them from returning to their, for lack of a better term, disenfranchised status?
There's a couple of different areas in which needs to be looked at. The minority groups are not being given as much access to funds as what I believe they could be given. I would like to take a lot of the wasteful spending out there and put it towards minority businesses. White businesses also need it, but since the minorities have been left out as much as they have, we really need to make sure we pay attention to that. Maybe giving a larger portion to the Minority Business Development Agency. That way it is directed to minorities primarily. We need to make sure that more minorities are put into those leadership positions so that they can get and have the funds paid attention to more. You know, why should a rich white man be the one who's making a decision on who gets all this money for small businesses? If that's the way that the minorities are perceiving a problem, then let's cure that problem by putting someone who looks like them into these positions to make the decision and take the white person out of it. Another area that we need to be looking at is the, what about those little boxes that's on every employment application? Have you been convicted of a felony? There's a lot of felony charges out there that shouldn't matter to the majority of the jobs out there. Let's take that little box away so that people can start going out there and actually competing for a job that's going to break that system and recidivism that we have. We need to start trying to figure out a way to correct the when a black man gets sentenced to 20% more time for no other reason than just being black. We've got to find a way to solve that problem. If we start solving those problems, then we can start bringing the minorities and the people back in that feels like they're not being part of the system.
Tony, how would you keep these disenfranchised voters in the political process?
Well, I think the first part is you have to get people to believe that their vote actually matters. Because right now, I think the reason why Trump and Bernie Sanders have touched on a lot of people's emotions is because they felt that they've been left out in the system, and part of it is they've left themselves out of the system by not participating in it. So I think the biggest thing is actually trying to get people to actually participate in the system in the first place, to actually feel that their vote matters. How do you bring more of them into it, though, is really the big question. I mean, I know they have the get out the vote process, and the reality is it always boils down to education. And people have to understand that in the early parts of their education, they have to learn that they are part of the government. You know, it's pretty much Abraham Lincoln's, government of the people, by the people, for the people. But if the people don't realize that they're the ones creating the system, and they have to understand that we're a republic, not a true democracy, we can't really move forward on that. So it's really about re-educating the people and helping them understand that they are the process.
Thank you. Catherine.
Thank you. You've asked a great question, and to me, it is reflected in the people that I talk to every day when I'm out there talking to them about this race, but also when I was Attorney General. I don't have to tell all of you, it came from the worst recession that we've ever seen, right? We've had people that lost their homes, they lost their jobs. We had the highest unemployment rate in the country. There's still a high rate of unemployment and underemployment that people don't take into consideration. There are people that thought they retired, lost their home, lost their retirement, and they're back in the workforce. These are issues for me that we need to continue to fight for, and those are the working families, people out there that are still struggling. Listen, we are moving in the right direction in this state, but there's more that needs to be done. It is about economic security when I talk to people. It is about jobs and creating jobs. We can in this state. We are primed to invest in green technology. We can lead the country in solar, create jobs, and address climate change. We can invest in our transportation infrastructure, again, and create jobs and have a positive impact on moving commerce. But it's also about wages. It's also about the families that I talk to, when they tell me that paycheck doesn't go as far as it used to. And to me, means that we need to increase the minimum wage, because if you're making minimum wage in this state, you're making $15,000 a year. I don't know how one person, let alone a family, can live off of that. It's equal pay for equal work. What I've been talking about when I've gone around the state to talk to families is we should be giving them a tax break. We should be fighting so that they can bring more of their working earnings home. I support $1,000 tax break, and you know how we pay for it? By ensuring that those big corporations that ship jobs overseas don't get tax breaks. Taking away unnecessary subsidies to big oil companies. Ensuring that we pass something as simple as the Buffett rule, so that a millionaire doesn't pay lower or earn a lower tax break than his or her executive assistant. I mean, these are things that we should be fighting for those working families. And I'll tell you the other thing when it comes to economic security, it is about an education system for their kids and students. That in this day and age, you should not have to mortgage your future just to get that education. We know that the students are graduating with exorbitant debt. I have talked to students in this state who have told me they make decisions on the type of education they're going to get based on the amount of debt they will have to accumulate. That's backwards. That is a problem with this country. And that is a problem with what we should be focusing on when it comes to Washington and addressing these issues. Listen, I don't think the federal government should be making money off of student loans. I think they can be capped. I think we should be lowering that interest rate. I think that students should be able to refinance their student loans just like you can your mortgage or your car loan. And I think students should be able to pay back that student loan based on the income they're making at the time. There's a lot of things we can do by thinking outside the box. But it requires us working together in a bipartisan manner to solve these problems. And it is about economic security for the people in this state. I met this incredible woman. Her name is Roxana. She's a single mother, and she has 2 children with special disabilities. And she gets up every morning, dresses them, feeds them, and puts them on their way to their special education classes. Then she gets in her car and goes across town to work as a home health care worker, to do the same thing for her clients. She comes back at night, puts her kids to bed, and starts all over again. She makes minimum wage. She doesn't get any additional benefits, health care. She works overtime, and she would work more overtime if they would let her. And the one question that I asked her is, how can I help as your next United States Senator? What can we do to make your life easier? The only thing she said is, listen, the only thing I want is just a little bit more money in my paycheck to bring home so I can spend more time with my daughters. Those are the families that I talk to. That's what this struggle is about. And I think to really address what you've just said is that frustration level, is to really listen and talk to the people in this state about their struggles and let them know that they have somebody that's going to fight by their side, that is going to fight for them in Washington and all the issues that they care about, which impact them every day in their homes.
Thank you. I tend to do most of the questioning, and now's usually the time when I open it up to everyone else. Please, someone jump in.
So,
You guys fight over it.
big deal. Immigration reform. What would you do once you're in office?
And we'll start with Catherine, then go back down the
And
line.
regarding to the immigration reform?
Right? No,
Yeah.
listen, I've been very vocal about this. This is a priority for me. My grandfather came from Chihuahua, Mexico. I'm a perfect example of what the American dream is about, and why we need to pass comprehensive immigration reform. This is something that I support, the bipartisan version that passed out of the Senate. I think we need to put the over 11 million undocumented on a fair pathway to citizenship, and we can still address and protect our borders and our security. This is an issue in Nevada that is so important for so many members of our communities, including the Asian American Pacific Islander community. I don't have to tell all of you, you know that the API community in this state, a majority of them are immigrants. A majority of them would benefit from DAPA and DACA. I support DAPA and DACA. I think the very reason why we have it is because there's a broken immigration system that Washington hasn't done anything with. And I have an opponent doesn't support it, who signed on to sue President Obama over DACA and DACA, who would rather tear families apart than keep them together. And we all know, we've seen the studies, when it comes to passing comprehensive immigration reform, it improves and contributes to our economy. There are so many benefits to it. And I've had the opportunity, again, getting around the state. I sat down with dreamers, talked to these young kids. To a T, every single one of them are working 1 or 2 jobs to help their families and putting themselves through their own getting an education. You know, and when you have somebody like Donald Trump who wants to come into the state of Nevada and call Mexicans rapists, criminals, and drug dealers, and thinks that the Philippines is a terrorist country, he has no business representing the people of the state, and he's not going to fight for Nevada or this country when it comes to passing comprehensive immigration reform. And anybody who's not willing to stand up to him, like my opponent, Congressman Heck, has no business asking the people of the state to vote for him to represent them in the United States Senate. This is a personal issue for me, but many people in this state of Nevada. And this should be our priority. This must be our priority come November when we have an election and starting in January when we are all in Washington.
Thank you.
I disagree with Catherine wholeheartedly. My family immigrated here from Italy. We came through legal channels being sponsored into the United States. When I first came to the United States and entered kindergarten, I spoke no English. And my parents at no time said, find somebody to speak your language and make them force you to help them with English language. They said, learn English faster. And I actually believe that my family's main job coming to America was to assimilate, to become part of the culture. And right now, I think a lot of the immigrants, no matter where they're from, have tried to implement the fact that their culture outweighs American culture. And I think the hardest part is understanding that it's not about whether these are good people or not. It's not about splitting families. It's about obeying the law. If these people who are living here illegally had an incident in their home, say I entered their house and injured one of them in the leg, they would call the police and expect that the laws would work for them. But yet they didn't follow the laws coming here initially. And so my biggest thing is not that you have to build a wall. I don't agree with Donald Trump that you have to build a wall. I think you have to enforce the laws that are already on the books. Because all you have to do is enforce the laws, and I believe that immigration would change. Because the people who come here wouldn't have the benefits of coming here because they wouldn't be privileged to them. DAPA and DACA has been overturned. The Supreme Court said the lower court decision held, and has any enforcement changed in regards to changing, removing these sanctuary cities, or removing these people? The answer is no. So none of the governments have acted on any of these, even despite the Supreme Court's holding the lower court. What would happen if the immigrants left? Well, if Catherine actually looks at Numbers USA and reads and watches the videos on where immigration is actually hurting our country, she might see that initially it looks nice because our population seems to be growing, but we've grown almost 62 million people in the last 30 years, but yet the number of people paying taxes hasn't gone up. And so that means we're spending more and our overall income is less. If these people were to exit the United States, Numbers USA estimates that there's about 10,000 illegal immigrants in the workforce, or 10% of the workforce is illegal immigrants. Well, that would instantly open up a lot of jobs, and that would actually create a point where demand would increase and wages would increase. Kids here that are doing well and going to school, I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm not implying that any of these people are bad people. That they're not working hard and they're not doing jobs that other Americans aren't willing to do. The question is do they deserve to do those jobs here in the United States? And then do their children deserve to be educated in the United States? In Nevada, we actually spend about 17% of our school budget actually educating illegal immigrant children. I believe that's education money that should actually be for American children. The ESA right now is fighting a big debate because the question is whether or not some of the money will be used to have kids go to religious schools or private schools, and that would take away from the school district. But the reality is that they're trying to give $5,000 per child to the students when, if you look at the school board numbers for Nevada, it's actually estimated 14,000 to 17,000 is estimated per student to be towards education in Nevada. So would it take away from the public school system? The answer is no. You're taking away not conserve the entire bit of money, to allow the parents to choose whether or not they want to go to another education system that maybe isn't implementing the core curriculum, which is another entire field that I won't go into. Birthright privilege in the United States. If you look at Switzerland, they only give birthright citizenship if both of your parents are Swiss. So you can't just go to Switzerland and receive all the benefits. Although other countries allow you to declare asylum and receive benefits, the United States does have that, but we don't consider everybody to be a political asylum seeker. But I do believe if these people were to be sent home, that the United States would actually improve economically. We would save quite a bit in tax revenue that could be used for other sources. And the reality is Americans' tax dollars are supposed to be spent on Americans. Now, do I think we should give to other countries in the sense of helping them? The most important thing is helping them get educated. If other people want to leave their country because they think they're going to a better life, they're motivated to do more, but they should be motivated to do it in their country. So our best bet is to help take our dollars and re-educate their people to help improve their quality of life in their own countries. Not to want them to come to our country, sort of detract from our finances, and then want to fly their flag instead of American flag.
Thank you.
Mary.
My thoughts are like this. There's three segments that's come over here into this country. You've got the criminal sort that comes over here and they commit felonies, they destroy lives, they destroy our property. Those people should immediately not only serve their prison sentence, but then be deported and threatened with something really, maybe life in Sheriff Arpaio's tent camp if they ever come back across the border like they shouldn't be. Then you've got the children that were brought over here that knows no other life except for here in the United States. They would not be able to speak the language hardly. They would have a hard time assimilating back into the culture in which their parents come from. Those people should be allowed to stay here if they want to. It is that middle segment group of people that is hard to determine what they're doing. If they have a job, if they're working and supporting themselves, then yes, they should be allowed to stay here. They are the good Hispanics, the good Asians, the good Europeans that should have a right to stay here and continue contributing to this country legally. We need to make sure we turn around and we do something about the borders. We cannot allow the drugs and everything to continue pouring across the borders because we have terrorists that's also coming across. So I believe in a virtual wall. Let's use a technology that we have like this camera. Let's use that technology so that we can catch the people that's coming across the border and have people go and pick them up and turn them back immediately. We need to make sure that the E-Verify is put in place with extremely harsh punishment to the employers who is hiring the people and allowing our wages to American citizens to be dropped back down, because it starts with the employers. If the jobs are not there for the illegal immigrants, then they're not going to come across. If they're not going to be able to support their families, they will not come. So let's make sure that we enforce the laws in which we have in place right now. I do not believe that the people who have come across that border should be made citizens. Legal permanent residents, yes, but I do not believe that they should become citizens for the simple reason they broke the laws to either get here or to remain here. If they cannot follow a basic law, then they should not be given the greatest privilege in this world. We also need to make sure that we no longer have those huge, long time periods between them applying to come into this country and them finally being allowed to come in this country. It's too long of a wait. People need to have something immediately. If they didn't, they wouldn't be applying to come to this country. So let's shorten those times to where they can come in within 6 months with a provisional right to stay here, with a provisional legal permanent resident status, and give them the right to work so that we at least have the proper numbers on who is here. Then if someone is caught into this country without the proper documentation, we know that they came across illegally and they're forced to leave. If they're not having to buck a system to come to the American dream, then they can continue having the American dream without bucking the system.
Thank you. Dennis.
So based on, and I think you touched on it too a little bit earlier, safety in regards to the terrorism that's occurred as recent as yesterday
Correct.
in Minnesota that ISIS is claiming. they were responsible for. And also the other things that have gone into France and Yemen and Egypt. What are your ideas in order to keep Nevadans safe? Because, you know, we have one of the biggest, you know, tourist spots in the world. What are your ideas of keeping us safer here in Nevada?
Some of the big ideas that we have is we cannot continue bringing the Syrian refugees over here without a proper vetting system. It is not Islam that we are at war with. It is ISIS, it's Al-Qaeda, it's Hezbollah, it's the Taliban. It is the terrorist organizations. It's not the religion. There's got to be a way that we can go out there and figure out which ones of these people have ties to the terrorist organizations and who don't. It has already been determined that there is no way that we can make that determination right now. So why are we bringing in 110,000 Syrian refugees without us having a proper way to vet the system? That is putting other people ahead of American safeties. So until they can do that, instead of giving them the $1,100 as soon as they get here and then $3,500 to continue supporting them, why don't we use that money to build a place for them to be able to be safe in their own country? It's going to cost less, and we leave them there until we can find the proper way to vet them. Then we need to make sure that the border is sealed so that people cannot sneak across the border that is wanting to do us harm. How do we know that we don't have dirty bombs coming into this country across this porous border? We don't. So we have to make sure that they can't come across that border. To protect Las Vegas itself, we are a major asset to terrorists. If they can come over here and just hit the MGM Grand during New Year's, if they can hit any one of the Fremont Street experience on any given holiday vacation or any given weekend, come on, you know, the Californians come here every weekend and fill up quite a bit of our hotel rooms. If we cannot put the money in here so we can properly train our police officers to keep us safe, we will be a target. And right now, the incumbent in my seat thinks it's okay to bring whoever into this country that wants to come into this country and allow them to stay, and they're not putting American citizens first. It must stop, and we must realize that the government is the government for Americans first, and then other people last. But Americans must come first for once.
Well, I've got a few points. I agree mostly with what Meredith said. There's no way to vet these people. They don't have records. They don't have computers to document. They don't have fingerprints. They don't have anything. We have no idea who we're bringing in. If we had to bring in refugees of any sort, I would be okay with bringing in very young children and women. I think I'd prefer to leave the younger males out, because I think they're potentially going to be the problem. But I think the biggest thing is we can't win that war. The whole thing with ISIS, Syria, it's not us, it's them. So they have to handle it internally. And the question is how can we make them handle it internally? And I think Nevada has one of the hugest opportunities to influence global economics in an amazing way. And it's with solar energy. Nevada has more sunny days than any other state, well, shy of a little bit in Arizona, southern Utah, and a little bit in New Mexico. But if we created solar farms, and there's articles in Scientific American 2009 and in National Geographic 2013 that talk about how many square miles of solar panels we would need to supply America with about 85 to 90% of their electrical needs. We could do that here in Nevada. And it doesn't even have to be money from the federal government. We could actually start a bond where the people paid for it, and you could offer them 5 times the return on their bond purchase within a few years of building the solar farms. Once we do that, our importing of crude oil, even to support production of electricity, would go down hugely. And so we could impact Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia would be forced to deal with the problem because they understand that other countries would potentially do something similar. It's based on what's called terawatts of sun solar power that arrives in the United States and in the world actually. And we've got lots of it. So why aren't we using it? The initial cost of producing solar panels is nothing compared to the benefit we would save in years. and change the global economic, whether you believe in global warming or not, it's about what's good for the world and what's good for America. Create a lot of jobs, mostly electricians union, but the reality is it would create a lot of jobs building solar panels plus maintaining. We would need somewhere between 6,000 and maybe 10,000 square miles, which could be done easily, and you could divide it amongst Nevada, southern Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, so that it could include other senators and they have to work together to get this accomplished. But once we did that, the dependence on oil would decrease. Saudi Arabia would be forced to interact to help deal with their own problem, because the form of Islam that ISIS belongs to, as well as most other type of Islamic radicals out there, is Wahib Islam, which comes from Saudi Arabia. So they definitely have some type of direct influence, as well as their money has been shown to finance quite a bit indirectly, even though none of the kings or political leaders have actually been proven to donate their own money to it. The money comes from Saudi Arabia, and although Saudi Arabia is trying to do a little bit more, they're not really doing much. And so I think the biggest thing in protecting America is bringing our troops home, getting out of the Syria, Iraq, ISIS, Afghanistan. We can't win. Russia couldn't win. Russia tried in the 70s. They could not beat Afghanistan because, number one, they can't beat the culture and they can't beat the terrain. And we can't win there either. And so our best bet is to deal with them diplomatically and financially. And that's the way you're going to protect America. And once again, you cannot vet the people coming in, and the only way to prevent them from coming in is not allowing them to come in at all.
Thank you. You know, I was fortunate, as I've said, to be the Attorney General of the great state of Nevada for 8 years. And I will tell you, every day I woke up, I was always concerned about the safety and security of the people and families that lived here. And I also knew that Las Vegas was a prime target. That's why my office supported Homeland Security Commission here. That's why I got regular briefings from Homeland Security, high-level briefings on security issues here in the state of Nevada. And that's why I work with local, state, and federal law enforcement on these issues on a regular basis here in the state of Nevada. And I'm proud to say that law enforcement statewide have endorsed me in this race for United States Senate. It's the first time they've ever come together to do that, and they chose me. You know, when we are talking about our security, it requires us to continue to give the resources to law enforcement, to continue to give the resources to Homeland Security issues, like our Homeland Security Commission here, to ensure that law enforcement has the training and the skills they need and the intelligence they need to protect our communities. It also requires us to ensure that our central intelligence agencies and our law enforcement agencies do a strong and thorough vetting of people coming into this country. And I think that's a priority for not just here in Nevada, but across the country. But it also requires us to work in a bipartisan manner to do simple things that we know will protect our security. Like, for instance, passing a law at the federal level that if you're too dangerous to fly on a plane, then you're too dangerous to buy a gun in the United States. If you can't fly, then you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. That, to me, are areas where we should be working in a bipartisan manner. I can tell you, my opponent, Congressman Heck, doesn't support that. These are things that when we're talking about our national security, we should be working together to address these issues. I'm not going to stop. I've been fortunate enough to be a prosecutor 10 years working with law enforcement to protect people of the state across the country. That's going to continue for me.
I think we have time for one more question.
I did like to have something to share because I deal with pretty much on a daily basis. As all of you that I commend you that run the race, that's what America is all about. But on the immigration issue, I know you came when you were 2-year-old. I came when I was 13. Someone in your family have to be here first in order to start the chain. But then when you are considering the immigration issue, our system is broken. I've been looking for ways that if someone's here for the American dream, they came to tour the country, and they just love it here. There's no way for them that they came in with a passport, which that we can identify who they are, rather than jump over the fence, the border, what have you, that we have no way to track them who they are, okay? So put that into consideration, that we must give these people that came in with a passport a way to fulfill American dream, just like my father did. So, with that being said, I know that I'm actually working with someone in regarding to DAPA. That is for some young children that come over and got the, that they're in school and what have you. But for someone that came to chase American dream, we have nothing for them. And let me close my remark with this. Once someone, which that I've talked to many, many people, once they're here in the country, especially from China or many Asian countries, once they're here, say underground, for 5 years, they cannot survive. Even if they have a green card, they go back to China. They cannot say you get used to it anymore. Okay? So we must provide a legal path. But a lot of these people that's here for 5 years or longer, it's like jail for them. They cannot do this, they cannot do that, and they live in the nightmare. And that's pretty hard. So we must provide a way. So please, any one of you, and maybe all of you, will be in representing Nevada into the Congress. And so please put that into consideration, that anyone that come in legally with a passport, we must provide them a way.
So, you're talking about visa overstay, is what they call it. They have a
Yes.
name for it. And that's a big dilemma, because usually those people come here and they come to visit family, people that are already here in this country. It's not usually that they're coming to America just for tourism and they decide to stay.
There's 1.8 million that are on tourist visa that came here to gamble, that came here to see what America is all about. They came over to perform. They came over for something, for business and what have you. I've just talked to some business people. They say, you know what? America is great. What they have seen. They are very capable people, but there's no way for them. Unless you have $1 million or more, which people that are really rich, they don't care anyway. They'll buy their way into anywhere. But if for someone that is middle, and or that the only way that they can come over is scrape everything together, come and visit what America is all about. That's what America is. We're all immigrants. So now that we make this our country, we got to give people a way out, that they're here. But the one that they can jump the border, come forth and back, that's totally a different story. I've seen them come in, go out, come in and go out.
So perhaps the question is, how do we handle, and some of you did touch on it on your responses to Kevin's original question, but how do we handle the issue of people with visa overstays? Since they are in somewhat of a slightly different category than people who, quote unquote, just jump the border or something along those lines. And Tony, why don't we start with you, because you had responded to Kevin, and then we'll allow everyone else to.
I think the hard part is, I understand what you're saying, and I myself know a lot of people that have done it. So it's not, and I know people are patients of mine that they have businesses in the United States that they started, even though they're not technically here legally. And they are what we would consider to be good citizens in all aspects. Business owners, they actually pay taxes somehow, I don't know how, but they still file, they do everything that they're supposed to do to look like a normal American. So what do you do with these people that have been here 20 years, not just a few years? The hardest part is maybe not just doing something for the people that have already been here, it's, you have to sort of prevent it from happening again. And then once you can prevent it from happening again, then we can work with the people that are already here. because they've been an example of trying to do the right thing. And so, one, the government maybe has to be a little more particular in not just allowing people to fly into the United States, show your passport, and then you can come. Maybe you have to apply. And then when they don't leave when they're supposed to, we need to actually look for those people so that situation doesn't occur. But for the people that are here, and they're doing well, and they've been here many years, I have a little more respect for that than people who've come and gone over the border illegally. And because of what you're saying, they're a prisoner here. And so they can't go back to China. They're going to swim or get in a boat back and forth, and that's an entirely different trip versus somebody who can figure out how to cross the Mexican border back and forth. So I think definitely that is a big question, and what you can do about it, that's going to need to be determined. And so there's got to be lots of steps to fix immigration in general. But the question is who gets to stay and who doesn't get to stay is going to have a lot of basis on what you maybe contributed to America. But then maybe the other situation is how can we say that people can come here, live here, work here, even as a non-citizen, but you're not entitled to any of the benefits of being an American. You can't get welfare, you can't get Social Security, you can't do anything unless you lived here X number of years, type of thing. So it's a difficult question, but I think there needs to be a lot of answers taken. And I don't have all those answers without knowing even a little bit more information at this moment. But I think definitely all the aspects need to be worked on.
Mary, visa overstays. And we'll finish with the chapter.
Visa overstays is in that category that I felt they need to at least become legal permanent residents and be allowed to stay as long as they have already been a productive member of society. If they've come over here and have had, what is commonly referred to as anchor babies at this time, and now they're living on welfare and stuff like that, I do not believe that any bigger drain on this society should be allowed to continue. The children, by current laws, may be deemed American citizens. There's a big argument right now. I believe that the way that the Constitution and the 13th Amendment is written, once they're born here in the United States, they are a citizen. So we have to figure out what to do in those circumstances. But the majority of the visa overstays do take care of themselves. They do find a way to provide for themselves. They start their own businesses. They go get EIN numbers so that they can file their taxes in that way. They've done everything they could to be a productive member of society other than coming in out of the dark. Let's bring them in out of the dark so that we know who we are working with and we know what we can do with it, and they can become the productive members of society.
You've identified a procedural distinction, but at the end of the day, the answer and solution is a pathway to citizenship. It is a pathway to citizenship for them like everyone else. There's no distinction. The only distinction is procedurally we would be addressing specifically in a comprehensive immigration reform how we address visa overstays. But to me, it is the same thing. It is a pathway to citizenship. And that is no distinction at the end of the day when it comes to passing comprehensive immigration reform. That's why we need it. That's why I supported the bipartisan version that's passed out of the United States Senate. It was to address that. We have a broken immigration system. Washington has not fixed it. That's why we see what is happening today happening. That's why we have DACA and DACA. That benefits many people in the Asian American Pacific Islander community. But it is about a pathway to citizenship and focusing on how we do that. That to me is the priority.
Well, and obviously we are all very passionate about many issues. Immigration touches all of us. No one on this dais is more than one generation removed from not being a United States citizen. So it is very important to us. But again, we appreciate, again, your taking time out to address many of our concerns today. Just so you know, we will have one additional day of makeup interviews, which is probably going to happen Wednesday the 28th, for only a few individuals who could not be present today or at the original interview time. We anticipate by the end of that week, or by the end of the month, I should say, releasing our endorsements. Two last things. First, we would like to invite all of you, if you have not been already, we are having our 13th annual Asian American Group Awards Banquet next Saturday, the 24th, at the Treasure Island Casino. It'll be.
I'm already coming.
I'm
pretty sure it's on my calendar.
I believe you had, Mike had mentioned you had already confirmed, Catherine. but you're all invited. It starts at 5:30, and I'll be sending out some more information on it tomorrow in an email to everyone that has interviewed with us. But we'd love to invite you to that evening. We're anticipating somewhere between 400 to 450 guests that night. We're honoring 13 different individuals who have been consistently been giving back to the Las Vegas community, and numerous individuals affiliated in the healthcare related field, or business people who have created charitable foundations, things of that nature. But I'll get you more information probably sometime around lunch tomorrow is my guess. And the last question we would have for all of you is this. Now that we're done with our interviews, before you leave, we would love to have a photo session with you guys, a little team photo action before you run off. Other than that, on behalf of the entire Asian American Group, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
I
Our
appreciate
pleasure.
it.